Marine Corps officers? Easy. They're just the guys with shinier collars who tell everyone else what to do. That's it. End of video. Except it's not that simple. Because the higher you go, the less it's about yelling orders. And the more it's about making decisions that affect hundreds, then thousands, then the entire Marine Corps. Strategy, logistics, politics, budgets, war planning, things that sound complicated fast. But here's the thing. If you understand what each rank is actually responsible for, it becomes surprisingly simple. Every promotion just expands the size of the problem you're trusted to handle. So let's break it down from the brand new butter bar to the top of the Corps. Second Lieutenant 01. The second lieutenant, also known as the butter bar, fresh out of OCS or the basic school, brand new rank, brand new responsibility, and zero real-world experience in leading Marines outside of training environments. On paper, this is a commissioned officer trusted with leading a platoon, usually around 30 to 40 Marines. That means everything that platoon does or fails to do is technically on them. Tactically, they're learning how to plan missions, issue orders, manage resources, and actually translate higher headquarters intent into something their Marines can execute. Now here's the funny part. They outrank every enlisted Marine in their platoon, including the gunnery sergeant who's been in for 15 years and has forgotten more about the Corps than the lieutenant currently knows. So what's their real job? Learn fast, listen to their NCOs, make decisions, don't pretend to know everything. At this level, leadership isn't about being impressive. It's about being coachable. First Lieutenant 02. The first lieutenant is what happens when the second lieutenant survives long enough to realize they don't actually know everything. By this point, they've usually had some real time leading a platoon. They've made mistakes. They've been corrected, sometimes publicly, sometimes painfully, and they've started understanding how the Marine Corps actually works outside of PowerPoint and doctrine. A first lieutenant is still typically leading a platoon, but now there's more confidence behind their decisions. They're better at planning operations, handling training schedules, managing equipment accountability, and dealing with the endless stream of administrative tasks that no one warns you about. They're not brand new anymore, but they're also not senior. They sit in an interesting middle ground, where expectations go up, but supervision doesn't disappear. The biggest shift, they stop trying to prove they're in charge and start focusing on making sure the mission gets done. Competence replaces confidence, and that's when real leadership starts forming. Captain 03. The captain is where things stop feeling like training wheels and start feeling very real. At this rank, you're usually commanding a company, roughly 150 to 200 Marines. That's no longer I lead a platoon. That's I'm responsible for an entire company's readiness, discipline, performance, and morale. If something goes wrong, it's not just your section anymore, it's your formation. Captains plan larger operations, manage multiple platoon commanders, coordinate logistics, training cycles, evaluations, and yes, mountains of paperwork. They are the link between senior leadership and the Marines actually executing the mission. This is also the rank where the Marine Corps decides if you're just good or if you're promotable. The light roast, this is peak. I live in my office now. The days of just focusing on tactics are over. Now it's budgets, reports, inspections, and responsibility that doesn't turn off at 1700. At this level, leadership becomes less about direct control and more about trust. Major 04. Major is where you officially leave the small unit leader world and enter the land of operational planning. You're usually not commanding companies anymore. Now you're serving as an operations officer, executive officer, or on a battalion or regimental staff. Translation, you're the one building the plan that captains execute. Majors deal with coordination between companies, long-term training cycles, deployment schedules, logistics planning, and making sure the commander's intent actually turns into something realistic. This is less about leading 40 Marines face-to-face and more about synchronizing hundreds of them without chaos. Here's the subtle shift. At this level, mistakes scale up fast. A bad decision doesn't affect one platoon. It can affect an entire battalion. Light roast. This is where PowerPoint proficiency becomes a survival skill. Briefs matter. Clarity matters. Precision matters. Major is where tactical leaders start becoming operational thinkers. And from here on out, the chessboard just keeps getting bigger. Lieutenant Colonel 05. Lieutenant Colonel is where you typically take command of a battalion, around 800 to 1,000 Marines. Now, we're not talking about coordinating companies. You are the commander, the final decision maker for everything that battalion does. Training, deployments, discipline, operational readiness, it all lands on your desk. At this level, leadership becomes less visible but more consequential. You're not micromanaging platoons. You're setting the tone, defining priorities, and trusting your company commanders to execute your intent. Your job is to think ahead. 6 months, a year, sometimes longer. The scale is different. One call can affect hundreds of families. One decision can shape an entire deployment. This is peak commander presence. The way you walk into a room actually changes the atmosphere. Not because of volume, but because of weight. Lieutenant Colonel is where experience, judgment, and reputation truly start carrying authority. And above this, we leave battalions behind. Colonel 06. Colonel is where the scale jumps again. At this rank, you're typically commanding a regiment or serving in a high-level staff position. That can mean responsibility for several thousand Marines, multiple battalions, multiple commanders, multiple moving parts that all have to function together. You're no longer focused on individual training events or small tactical adjustments. You're shaping operational direction, setting priorities across units, allocating resources, managing risk at a level where mistakes aren't just inconvenient, they're strategic. Colonels operate in rooms where the conversations are less about how do we execute this patrol, and more about how does this regiment support the larger campaign. This is where calendars become weapons. Meetings stack, decisions multiply, and your time is no longer your own. At this level, leadership is influence, it's vision, it's alignment. And above colonel, we enter the general officer ranks. Completely different atmosphere. Brigadier General 07, Brigadier General, 1 star, and everything changes. At this level, you're no longer worrying about companies or regiments. You're overseeing brigades, large commands, or serving in strategic positions within the Department of Defense. The scale now involves thousands of Marines. A brigadier general doesn't plan tactical missions. They set direction, connect military operations with strategic and political priorities, and coordinate with other branches, civilian leadership, and sometimes international allies. Every decision has wide-ranging consequences. Budgets, readiness, large-scale deployments. It's no longer how do we train better, it's where's the Marine Corps going next. This is the rank where your uniform sees more meetings than actual combat. Your calendar is a minefield, but every single decision matters. Leadership at this level is all about strategic vision, and this is just the first star. Major General 08. Major General, 2 stars, double the responsibility. At this rank, you're overseeing divisions or holding high-level strategic staff positions. Thousands of Marines, multiple brigades, multiple moving parts, all under your supervision. If something breaks, it's no longer a single battalion, it's an entire division. Majors and colonels plan operations, but major generals set priorities, allocate resources, and shape policy. They coordinate with other branches, national commands, and often have a seat at inter-service or international discussions. The decisions here can ripple through the Marine Corps for months or even years. Light roast. This is where your email inbox becomes a weapon of mass destruction. Meetings, briefings, and approvals dominate your day. The work is high stakes, strategic, and relentless. Leadership here is influence multiplied by scale. Your vision doesn't just guide Marines, it shapes the Corps itself. Lieutenant General 09, Lieutenant General, 3 stars, big responsibility. You're in charge of entire Marine Corps commands or serving in senior positions within the Department of Defense. Thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of Marines operate under your directives. Strategy, policy, resource allocation, and inter-branch coordination dominate your day. You're no longer managing operations directly. Your focus is ensuring that the lower ranks execute effectively while aligning the Corps with national defense priorities. Every decision you make can affect deployments, budgets, and the lives of thousands of Marines and their families. Your uniform barely sees daylight. The real work is in briefings, memos, and meetings where you're expected to know everything before anyone even asks. Leadership at this level is pure influence, shaping not just units, but the future direction of the Marine Corps itself. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell.